This past Saturday morning, had an incident I want to tell you about. I, I awakened, as I normally do, fairly early, and just enjoying the quiet of the morning. I heard the sound of what I at first thought was a cat, but as I listened a little bit more, I heard the gasping of a child, and then heard the subsequent louder cries from the steady drone that I heard at first. That prompted me to rush to the window and look outside, only to see a shoeless, shirtless, blonde haired child running from the corner of my house to the neighbor's yard, uh, crying, crying. Immediately when I saw this, I stepped into the door and I told my wife, honey, there's a child outside and it's crying. And I ran to the front door and out the house, walked toward the neighbor's drive and positioned myself. I literally walked away a bit of a distance down the driveway just to not run up on something because I had no idea what was going on, but I could clearly hear this child crying out. When I saw the child, I said, hey, little one, you okay? And the child turned and looked at me, and she immediately changed her entire disposition. She went from scared to just absolutely glad to see a person. And she tried to come up to me and everything else. And by this time, my wife had come out of the house. And the child was pointing and trying to talk to me and trying to tell me things. Had a fairly good vocabulary. I ascertained the child was about 2 or 3 years old. So when my wife came over, I said, honey, I've never seen this child in the neighborhood before. Do you? I said, where could it possibly come from? So I'm scanning as I'm walking toward the side of this other house. I'm scanning the neighborhood looking for something, looking for somebody coming down the street that excitedly might be looking for a child that might say, hey, have you seen a kid around here? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. But the child is trying to point and gesture to me, and my wife and I are trying to talk. And she walks up this stoop, and I look and I see that this door is open. My wife says, that door is open. I said, yeah, it is. And I could just see inside. I began knocking on the door. No response. My wife says, pound on the door. No response at all. Looking inside the partially open door, I could tell that that immediately there was nothing that appeared to be. There were no signs of distress. Let me put it like that. Vehicles were in the driveway, yet nobody seemed to be in the house. My wife then took the child by the hand and everything and said, honey, go get a blanket. And found a blanket, came outside, and while my wife was standing there holding the child's hand and comforting the child, which was just, the child was fine. Car came driving up, and I didn't see the lady's face, but my wife said the lady was just smiling at first, and then she saw the child, and her whole expression changed. Long story short, or short story long, whichever way you want to look at it. Everything turned out fine. Mom had gotten up to go to a service station while the child was asleep. Child obviously woke up, discovered mom was gone, and decided to walk out of the house. We looked after that child for just a few minutes. Then this took really just a few minutes. It was the debrief that got to me when my wife and I came back into our home and sat down in the living room and just was amazed by this. I didn't tell her, but I was literally quaking, just kind of shaking inside. Let me tell you why. When I realized that this child was a little girl, I realized several things. I couldn't touch that child. My fatherly instincts said to pick the child up, keep the child warm, warm the child up, pick the child up, get it off the cold ground and everything. I could not touch that girl child. I'm going to go one better. I could not touch that little white girl child because I had to be aware of the optics. Big 6'4" black man, little blonde haired child. 7 a.m. in the morning. Nobody else around. On the stoop, door partially open to a residence. During this encounter, my wife told me, do you think anything is wrong inside? I said, I don't know. I don't see anything in disarray inside the house where I could immediately see. I thought about going back to my house to get my pistol, legal pistol, which I could legally carry. But I thought about the optics of that also. 6'4" black man, 7 a.m. in the morning, holding a little white child with a pistol, going into a house with an open door if the wrong person saw that. Or if the right person saw that. I don't know. I don't know. All I know was I couldn't touch the child. When the child tried to reach up to me and touch me, I literally backed away. Anybody that knows me knows that that is counter to any part of my nature when it comes to children. My wife and I talked about calling the police. The police were the last people that I was going to call. And while all this was going through my head, I was even trying to think of the verbiage that I would use to communicate to the dispatcher about what we needed, so that it would be clear if, in the event that they were called, it would be clear what was going on, so that they wouldn't roll up on this 6'4" black man with this little blonde-haired white child with no shirt and bare feet, 7 a.m. in the morning, in front of a house with an open door in 44-degree weather. And I'm wearing short pants and a shirt. I cannot tell you how nervous the entire encounter made me. Can't tell you how many questions that I had going through my head, and even my wife had questions going through her head. I knew the optics would be a whole lot better if she was there, which is why I awakened her. The optics would be a little bit better. So here I am, a spiritual being having a human experience with another human being that not completely capable, a child that needed some help, aid, comfort. And I had to make myself ultra keenly aware of the optics in order to keep myself safe. The important thing is the child is safe. Fine, no problem. No problem at all. But I'm here to tell you, I was nervous as hell. I live in a really nice neighborhood. I know a lot of my neighbors. There are a lot of people that don't know me. I'm aware of that. I'm aware that there are a lot of women and girls out there who have been assaulted and abused by men. I'm aware of that. I don't discount that. I'm aware that being a man of color in this country is becoming very exhausting. To have to be hyper vigilant about all of the optics is tiring. What I'm also aware of is the current timber of all kinds of relations in this country, in this world today. Sad state of affairs when we have to think about what something looks like as opposed to just reaching out and helping somebody that is in need when they need it. Everybody can't do it, I understand. Don't expect it. But what would it have looked like if I lived right next door and I see this child out there and I do absolutely nothing? What does that say about the human condition? We got to do better.